My name is, and I am what you humans might call a. I study alien species across the galaxy for the Galactic Research Consortium. I have observed over 200 different sentient species in my 4 centuries of life, documented their behaviors, their societies, their methods of conflict resolution. I thought I understood violence. I thought I understood war. I was wrong. This is my account of humanity's introduction to galactic society, and why every civilized species now speaks your name in hushed, reverent tones. This is why the Galactic Council passed Resolution 847 Alpha, officially designating humans as a protected aggressor species, and why no member species is permitted to engage Earth in hostilities without unanimous Council approval. This is the story of how I learned that everything we thought we knew about warfare was nothing more than children playing with toys. It began 3 cycles ago when our deep space monitoring stations detected unusual energy signatures from what you call the Milky Way's Orion arm. The readings were confusing, primitive nuclear technology mixed with surprisingly sophisticated quantum mechanics, radio waves carrying structured information, chemical propulsion systems that seemed to defy efficiency logic yet somehow worked. The consortium decided to send a research fleet to investigate. I volunteered immediately. New species discoveries were rare, and this one seemed particularly fascinating. The energy signatures suggested a species that had somehow developed space travel despite using laughably inefficient technology. We assumed they would be easy to study, perhaps even integrate into galactic society with minimal effort. Our fleet consisted of 12 vessels, each roughly the size of your largest human cities. We brought anthropologists, linguists, technology analysts, and a small complement of peacekeepers. The peacekeepers were standard protocol, nothing more than a deterrent. In 3 centuries of first contact, we had never encountered a species that couldn't be reasoned with through superior technology demonstration. I remember the day we entered your solar system clearly. I was in the observation deck of our flagship, the Eternal Harmony, watching your star grow larger in our viewports, such a young, energetic star. Your planet appeared on our scanners as a blue and green marble, teeming with life in a way that took my breath away. Most inhabited worlds support life. Few are so vibrantly, aggressively alive as Earth. Our scanners detected your species immediately. Bipedal, carbon-based, roughly 6 billion individuals scattered across the planet's landmasses. Your technology was indeed primitive by galactic standards, but there was something else our sensors picked up that made our military advisor, Commander, grow unusually quiet. There are energy signatures across the planet, he reported to Fleet Admiral O. Thousands of them. They appear to be weapons, but the readings don't make sense. Some are releasing energy equivalent to small stars. We later learned these were your nuclear weapons, but at the time we couldn't believe that any species would develop starfire weapons before achieving faster-than-light travel. It seemed backwards, inefficient, dangerous. We dismissed it as sensor error. The Admiral ordered our fleet to take position near your moon for observation. Standard protocol dictated we observe for several cycles before making contact, learning your languages and customs to ensure smooth first contact. We had done this hundreds of times before. But you noticed us. I was reviewing preliminary biological scans when Communications Officer Ara's voice crackled over the ship's speakers with unconcealed amazement. Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from the planet. Multiple sources. They've seen us. This was unprecedented. Most species required direct contact before acknowledging our presence. Their technology shouldn't have been sophisticated enough to detect our ships, which were equipped with standard light-bending camouflage. Put it through, Admiral O ordered. What followed was a cacophony of human languages. Excited voices speaking in dozens of different tongues, all asking variations of the same questions. Who are you? Where are you from? Are you peaceful? Do you come in peace? But there were other voices too, calmer voices. Military voices using terms we didn't recognize but whose tone was universally clear across all species. They were preparing for possible conflict. Fascinating, I murmured, making notes on my data pad. They've achieved global communications despite being bound to one planet. Their reaction suggests a unified species response to external threats. I was so very wrong about that unity part. The Admiral decided to initiate first contact immediately. We had protocols for species that detected our approach. Usually, A simple demonstration of our peaceful intent and superior technology was sufficient to open dialogue. We transmitted a basic mathematical sequence, followed by star charts showing our point of origin, followed by images of our crew. Then we waited for a response. What we got back was chaos. Your planet exploded into activity. Every electromagnetic spectrum lit up with transmissions. We detected massive energy spikes across the globe as military installations powered up. Most concerning, we detected several of those starfire energy signatures beginning to power up as well. "They're arming nuclear weapons," Commander reported, his usually steady voice tight with concern. "Multiple locations across the planet." "Impossible," Admiral O replied. "We haven't made any aggressive moves. Standard protocol dictates they should be welcoming us with scientific curiosity. But humans, we learned, don't follow standard protocol. Your governments began transmitting to us simultaneously, not in cooperation but in competition. We were receiving messages from the United States, Russia, China, the European Union, and dozens of other political entities we didn't initially understand were separate nations rather than different species. Each transmission carried the same underlying message. We welcome you to Earth. Please establish communication with us first and exclusively. They're divided, Ara reported with growing bewilderment. The species is politically fragmented. Each faction is trying to claim exclusive contact rights. This was already unusual. Most species achieved political unity before space travel. But what happened next? Everything we thought we knew about intelligent species. A human military vessel approached us. It was laughably small by our standards, roughly the size of one of our shuttle pods. Primitive chemical engines pushing it through space at speeds that would take years to travel between planets. But it was there, in space, approaching 12 massive alien vessels with technology that should have been like a wooden club facing disruptor cannons. And they were scanning us. "Admiral," our sensor officer reported, voice filled with disbelief. "The small human vessel is conducting detailed scans of our ships. Their sensors are crude but persistent. They're mapping our hull configurations." The vessel transmitted a message directly to our flagship. A single human face appeared on our main screen. Male, middle-aged by human standards, wearing what we later learned was a military uniform. He spoke in a calm, steady voice that somehow conveyed both respect and an underlying current of something that made our entire bridge crew shift uncomfortably. "This is Captain James Mitchell of the United Earth Defense Initiative vessel Defiant. On behalf of Earth's United Military Command, I welcome you to our solar system. We hope your intentions are peaceful. However, I must inform you that your presence has been detected by all Earth governments, and appropriate defensive measures are being taken. We request immediate communication to establish your intentions and prevent any misunderstandings." The way he said "misunderstandings" sent a chill through our bridge crew. There was something in his tone, something our universal translators couldn't quite capture, but that every member of our crew understood instinctively. He was politely threatening us. "Fascinating," I whispered, frantically making notes. "They've sent a military representative rather than a scientist or diplomat. This suggests their first priority is assessing threat level rather than establishing communication." Admiral O ordered our own communications officer to respond with standard first contact protocols. We transmitted peaceful intentions, offered cultural exchange, expressed desire for mutual benefit and learning. Captain Mitchell listened to our message, then responded in that same calm, terrifying voice. "We appreciate your peaceful intentions. However, Earth's military command requires verification of these intentions through action. We request that you move your fleet to the edge of our solar system while diplomatic contact is established. This is for the safety and comfort of both our species." It was a polite order, delivered in a tone that suggested compliance would be appreciated, but non-compliance would be addressed. Admiral O was insulted. "We are offering them the greatest gift in galactic history, contact with an advanced civilization. They dare to give us orders." Commander checked his tactical displays. "Admiral, I'm reading massive energy buildups across their planet. They appear to be targeting our position." "With what? Their primitive weapons couldn't scratch our shields." But I was studying the scans more carefully. The energy signatures were unlike anything in our databases. The humans weren't just powering up nuclear weapons, they were doing something else. Something our sensors couldn't quite identify. "Admiral," I said carefully, "I recommend we comply with their request. This species is already demonstrating unusual characteristics, perhaps prudence." "Absolutely not. We don't take orders from primitive species." That decision cost us dearly. The Admiral ordered our fleet to maintain position and opened a channel to the planet's surface, intending to establish direct contact with what he assumed was the planet's unified government. Instead, he got arguing. Dozens of human voices speaking different languages, all talking at once, all demanding exclusive contact rights. It was chaos. But underneath the chaos, I detected something that made my blood run cold. Military communications. Calm, professional voices coordinating something across the planet's surface. "Admiral," Commander said urgently, "I'm detecting massive electromagnetic spikes. They're powering up something big." The human vessel Defiant transmitted one final message. "This is Captain Mitchell. Earth's military command has designated your fleet as a potential threat due to your refusal to comply with safety protocols. You have 30 seconds to begin movement to the edge of our solar system, or we will take defensive action. This is your final warning." Admiral O laughed. Defensive action, what could they possibly? The sentence was never finished. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about warfare, about violence, about the terrible creativity that emerges when an entire species learns to kill efficiently. The humans attacked, but not in any way we expected, not in any way that made sense according to galactic standards of warfare. They didn't send massive fleets or energy weapons or any of the conventional tools of space combat. They sent packages. Hundreds of them launched from their planet's surface using chemical rockets that our sensors barely registered as threats. Small objects, each no bigger than a human torso, traveling at speeds that seemed almost leisurely by space combat standards. Our gunners barely bothered to target them. "Primitive kinetic weapons," Commander reported dismissively. "Our shields will absorb the impact without noticeable effect." The first package reached our lead escort vessel, the Swift Current. It struck the shield barrier and disappeared. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Swift Current's shield readings began fluctuating wildly. "What's happening?" Admiral O demanded. Before anyone could answer, the second package arrived. Then the third. Then dozens of them, each striking different sections of our fleet's shield perimeters. "Admiral," the Swift Current's commander transmitted, voice tight with confusion, "our shields are—" "They're not responding normally. The impacts are causing cascade resonance failures. These aren't simple kinetic weapons. They're designed specifically to disrupt our shield frequencies." "Impossible. They couldn't have analyzed our shield technology that quickly." "But they had." The packages weren't just kinetic weapons. They were adaptive learning systems that analyzed our shield frequencies during impact and transmitted that data back to Earth. Each subsequent package was modified to exploit the weaknesses the previous packages had discovered. Within minutes, our shields were failing. "How?" Admiral O whispered. "How could they possibly know our shield specifications?" The answer came from our own analysis computers. The humans hadn't tried to break through our shields using superior technology. Instead, they had done something that no galactic species had ever attempted. They had assumed our shields worked like theirs would. Their own primitive energy barrier technology used rotating frequencies to maintain stability. So they had built weapons that attacked rotating frequencies, modified in real time based on observed results. It was crude, inefficient, and completely outside our defensive doctrines. It was also working. "Admiral," Commander reported, voice grim, "the Swift Current's shields are down. They're defenseless." That was when we learned the second thing about human warfare, that galactic understanding. They targeted the defenseless ship with everything they had. Massive energy beams lanced up from Earth's surface. Not the clean, precise energy weapons used by civilized species, but crude, overwhelming torrents of destructive force that battered the Swift Current from multiple directions simultaneously. The ship's hull, designed to withstand meteor impacts and cosmic radiation, began to buckle under the sustained assault. Warning klaxons echoed across our command bridge as we watched one of our escort vessels slowly being torn apart. "Return fire," Admiral O ordered. Our gunners targeted the energy beam sources on Earth's surface. Our weapons, refined through of civilized warfare, struck with pinpoint precision, designed to disable enemy installations while minimizing collateral damage. The humans' response was immediate and terrifying. They stopped targeting the swift current. Instead, every weapon on their planet turned toward our flagship. "Evasive maneuvers," Commander shouted, but it was too late. The humans had done something that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Instead of engaging in the traditional exchange of precision strikes against military targets, they had coordinated every available weapon system on their entire planet to focus fire on a single target. The barrage that hit the Eternal Harmony was unlike anything in galactic military history. Hundreds of energy beams, kinetic projectiles, and weapons we couldn't identify struck our ship simultaneously. Our shields, already weakened by the adaptive packages, collapsed within seconds. I was thrown against a bulkhead as the ship shuddered under impacts that seemed to go on forever. Emergency lighting bathed everything in red as our engineering crews shouted damage reports. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12, main power conduits compromised, shield generators offline. But we were still alive. Our ship was massive, built to withstand significant damage. The humans' weapons, while overwhelming in quantity, lacked the sophistication to deliver killing blows quickly. That was our third mistake in understanding human warfare. They weren't trying to destroy us quickly. Admiral O, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead, managed to get back to his command chair. "Status report." "We're crippled but functional," Commander replied. "However, our weapons are mostly offline and we can't raise shields." "What about the rest of the fleet?" The tactical display showed the horrifying answer. 3 of our escort vessels were gone, torn apart by focused fire. The remaining ships were scattered, their formations broken, each vessel fighting individual battles against impossible odds. "They're not fighting like a unified fleet," our tactical officer reported with bewilderment. "Each ship is being engaged by different weapon systems using different strategies. It's like they're conducting separate experiments on each of us." That was exactly what they were doing. The humans weren't just trying to defeat us. They were studying us. Each ship in our fleet was being attacked by different combinations of weapons, different tactical approaches, different strategies. They were learning how we fought, how our technology worked, how we responded to different types of pressure. They were turning our first contact into a vast military research project. "Admiral," Ara called from the communications station, voice shaky, "we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel." Captain Mitchell appeared on our main screen again. Behind him, we could see his ship's bridge, and for the first time, I noticed something that should have terrified us from the beginning. His crew wasn't panicking. Despite engaging vessels dozens of times larger than their own, despite being completely out, every human on that bridge was calm, focused, professional. They were treating this as routine. "This is Captain Mitchell," he said in that same steady voice. "Your fleet has been neutralized. Your weapons are offline, your shields are down, and several of your vessels have been destroyed. However, I've been authorized to offer you terms for peaceful resolution." Admiral O stared at the screen in shock. Terms? They were offering us terms. What are your terms?" he managed to ask. "Immediate withdrawal from our solar system. All vessels currently capable of movement will escort your damaged ships to the edge of our territory. Once there, you will transmit complete technical specifications for your faster-than-light travel technology. In exchange, we will provide medical assistance for your wounded and safe passage back to your space." The bridge fell silent. They were demanding our most closely guarded technology in exchange for letting us live. "And if we refuse?" Admiral O asked. Captain Mitchell's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, something cold and implacable. "Then we continue our current strategy until all your vessels are destroyed and we recover your technology from the wreckage. Your choice, Admiral." I realized with growing horror that he meant it. Completely. The humans would destroy our entire fleet if we didn't comply, and they had just demonstrated they were capable of doing exactly that. "This is barbaric," Admiral O protested. Civilized species don't make demands of superior technology civilizations. Admiral, Captain Mitchell said quietly, with respect, you don't appear to be superior in any way that matters. The simple statement hit like a physical blow. We had superior technology, superior firepower, superior defenses. But we had been comprehensively defeated by a species that was supposedly primitive. How, Admiral O whispered, how did you defeat us so easily? Captain Mitchell was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his words would haunt me for the rest of my life. Admiral, your species has obviously achieved remarkable technological advancement. Your ships are marvels of engineering, your weapons are precise and sophisticated, your defenses are elegantly designed. But there's one thing you seem to have forgotten in all your advancement. What? War isn't about having the best technology. War is about breaking the enemy's will to fight while preserving your own. Everything else is just tools. I stared at the screen, finally understanding. We had focused on building better tools. Humans had focused on becoming better killers. And in the gap between those two philosophies lay the wreckage of our fleet and the shattered remains of everything we thought we knew about warfare. The journey back to galactic space should have taken 3 days using our faster-than-light engines. Instead, it took 2 weeks in what remained of our crippled fleet, escorted by an increasingly large formation of human vessels that seemed to multiply around us like some kind of mechanical infection. Admiral O had agreed to Captain Mitchell's terms. We had little choice. The humans had demonstrated they could destroy our ships at will, and their attacks were becoming more sophisticated by the hour. Worse, they were learning from every engagement. I spent those 2 weeks in what humans might call a state of shock. Everything I thought I understood about warfare, about violence, about the nature of conflict itself, had been shattered in a few hours of actual combat with these terrifying bipeds. But it was during that journey that I truly began to understand what we were dealing with. The human escort fleet grew daily. New ships arrived constantly, each one different from the last. I realized the humans weren't just escorting us. They were conducting a massive military exercise, using our defeated fleet as a training opportunity. Look at this, I called Ara over to my observation station. Ship identification scans show these aren't all military vessels. Some of these appear to be converted civilian craft. It was true. The humans had modified everything from cargo haulers to passenger transports into makeshift warships. Crude weapon mounts welded to hulls never designed for combat, armor plating bolted over civilian superstructures, military sensor arrays jury-rigged to commercial communication systems. They militarized their entire civilian fleet, Ara whispered in amazement, in a matter of days. But that wasn't the most frightening part. The most frightening part was how well it worked. These converted civilian vessels moved with the same professional coordination as their dedicated warships. The humans had somehow created an integrated military force from whatever resources they had available. How is this possible? I muttered, making frantic notes. It takes years to train crews for military operations. You can't just put civilians in converted ships and expect effective coordination. The answer came from an unexpected source. One of the human escort commanders contacted our ship directly. Not through official channels, not through formal diplomatic protocols, but simply by opening a communication channel and introducing himself. This is Commander Sarah aboard the converted freighter New Horizon. I understand you're a scientist studying our species. I was so surprised I almost dropped my data pad. You're talking to me directly. Why wouldn't I be? You're the right doctor. We intercepted your personnel files when we scanned your ships. I'd like to answer some of your questions if you're interested. This was completely outside any protocol I knew. Military officers didn't just casually chat with defeated enemy scientists. But humans, I was learning, didn't follow anyone's protocols but their own. Yes, I have questions, many questions. Commander laughed, and the sound was somehow both warm and unsettling. I bet you do. Fire away, Doc. How did you coordinate this response so quickly? Our first contact occurred less than a week ago, yet you've assembled a massive fleet from what appears to be civilian vessels converted to military use. Oh, that's easy, she replied casually. We've been planning for this scenario for decades. Planning, but you didn't know we existed. No, but we knew someone was out there eventually. Look, Doc, Humanity has been thinking about alien contact since we first figured out there were other stars. We've run thousands of scenarios, developed contingency plans for everything from peaceful scientific exchange to hostile invasion. When you showed up, we just activated Plan 7. Plan 7: hostile alien fleet demonstrates superior technology, but shows poor tactical coordination. Deploy adaptive defense strategy while mobilizing rapid response fleet using all available resources. I stared at the communication screen, trying to process what she was telling me. You had a specific plan for our exact approach. We had specific plans for 47 different first contact scenarios, Doc. What we learned from your attack was that you folks fight like you're afraid of breaking something. All that fancy technology, all those precise weapons, all that elegant strategy, but you fight like you're trying to preserve your toys instead of win the war. The casual way she said, "your attack," made me flinch. We had considered ourselves explorers making peaceful first contact. To the humans, we had been invaders from the moment we refused to comply with their initial request. "But your ships," I protested. "They're converted civilian vessels. How can untrained crews operate in military formations?" Commander was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice had lost some of its casual warmth. "Doc, there's something you need to understand about humanity. We've been fighting wars for our entire history. Not just occasionally, not just when necessary, but constantly. Every human culture has military traditions going back thousands of years. Every human learns basic tactical thinking as children through games and sports and competition. We don't have untrained crews, Doc. We just have crews who haven't been formally trained for space combat yet." "Yet? Oh yeah, they're learning fast. Every engagement with your fleet teaches us something new. Every human ship captain is sharing data with every other human ship captain in real time. We're building institutional knowledge of space warfare at a rate that should be impossible." I felt a chill run down my spine. "You're saying your entire species is naturally military?" "Not military, Doc. Competitive. There's a difference, though I can see how it might not be obvious to outsiders. We don't love war, but we love winning. And we're very, very good at adapting our competitive instincts to whatever situation requires winning." Over the following days, I learned more about human warfare than I had learned about galactic warfare in my entire career. The humans didn't just fight with their weapons, they fought with their entire civilization. Their planet-side industrial base was retooling to produce military equipment at impossible speed. Factories that had been producing consumer goods were churning out weapon systems. Research facilities were reverse engineering our technology from sensor scans and debris. Their entire educational system had shifted to accelerated training programs for space operations. "It's like watching an entire planet transform into a military machine," I reported to Admiral O during one of our daily briefings. "But it's not totalitarian or forced. They're doing it voluntarily, enthusiastically." The Admiral, who had spent most of the journey in his quarters, looked up from his own notes. "Voluntary militarization. That's just it. They don't see it as militarization. They see it as preparation. They assume that contact with galactic civilization means eventual conflict, so they're preparing for that conflict with the same enthusiasm other species might show for cultural exchange." But the most terrifying thing I learned during that journey was something Commander mentioned almost casually during one of our conversations. "You know, Doc, we're actually being pretty restrained here." "Restrained?" "Oh yeah, this is our peaceful first contact protocol. We're treating your fleet as honored guests who made an honest mistake rather than actual enemies." The implications of that statement kept me awake for days. If this was restraint, what would actual human warfare look like? I got my answer when we reached the edge of the solar system and began transmitting our faster-than-light technology specifications as agreed. The human escort fleet had grown to over 300 vessels, but as we prepared to depart, new contacts began appearing on our sensors. "Admiral," Commander reported, voice tight with concern, "I'm reading massive energy signatures approaching from deeper in the system. Multiple contacts, moving at significant speeds." The tactical display lit up with new contacts. Dozens of them, each one massive beyond anything we had seen before. "What are those?" Admiral O demanded. Captain Mitchell answered from his ship, which had remained alongside our flagship throughout the journey. Those are our deep space construction platforms, Admiral. We've been building a few new ships while you were here. A few new ships. On the tactical display, I counted 47 vessels, each one larger than our flagship. They had built an entire battle fleet in the 2 weeks since our first contact. Impossible, Admiral O whispered. No species can construct battle fleets that quickly. Well, Captain Mitchell replied, we had a lot of motivation. Plus, we've been working with some interesting new technology principles we observed from your ships. Amazing what you can accomplish when you don't worry about elegant design and just focus on making things work. The new human vessels looked nothing like their converted civilian ships. These were clearly purpose-built warships, but they were unlike anything in galactic military doctrine. They were crude, angular, covered with weapon systems that seemed to have been mounted wherever there was space. No elegant lines, no sophisticated curves, no aesthetic considerations at all. They looked like exactly what they were, ships built by a species that had decided to become very good at destroying other ships as quickly as possible. Admiral, Commander transmitted from her converted freighter, we're prepared to escort you to the edge of our territory now. But I thought you might want to know, we've been in communication with your galactic consortium while you've been here. This was news to us. What, how? Oh, we reverse-engineered your communication protocols from the data transmissions your ships have been making. We sent a message to your government informing them of your situation and requesting formal diplomatic contact. Admiral O stared at the screen. You contacted the consortium directly. Of course. We wanted to make sure there were no misunderstandings about our intentions. We explained that your fleet had made an honest mistake in first contact protocols, that we had resolved the situation peacefully, and that we were looking forward to establishing formal relations with galactic civilization. I felt my blood run cold. The humans had contacted the consortium. They knew our government's location, our communication frequencies, our diplomatic protocols. What was the response? Admiral O asked. Captain Mitchell was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried that same calm, terrifying undertone I had noticed during our first encounter. They informed us that first contact with primitive species is conducted exclusively through the consortium's exploration fleets, and that unsupervised contact with galactic civilization is strictly forbidden. They demanded that Earth cease all communication attempts and submit to consortium oversight for proper integration into galactic society. The silence on our bridge was absolute. I see, Admiral O said carefully, and your response. We thanked them for their clarification of galactic law and informed them that Earth would be happy to discuss our integration into galactic society through formal diplomatic channels. We also mentioned that we had some concerns about the consortium's exploration protocols and looked forward to addressing those concerns in future negotiations. Commander's voice joined the conversation. We also sent them complete technical specifications for our new ships and a detailed analysis of the tactical engagement that disabled your fleet. You know, just so they could better understand our capabilities. Admiral O closed his eyes. You told them exactly how you defeated us. Of course, Captain Mitchell replied. Transparency is important in diplomatic relations. We wanted to make sure there were no surprises that might lead to future misunderstandings. But I understood what they had really done. The humans hadn't just contacted the consortium. They had sent a message. A very clear, very specific message that said, we defeated your exploration fleet easily. We reverse-engineered your technology in days. We built a battle fleet in 2 weeks, and we're sharing all of this information with you so you know exactly what you're dealing with. It was a diplomatic way of saying, don't underestimate us again. As our crippled fleet prepared to enter faster-than-light travel, Captain Mitchell transmitted one final message. Admiral O, Doctor, it's been a pleasure meeting you. We hope this is the beginning of a long and productive relationship between our species. When you return to consortium space, please convey our eagerness to begin formal diplomatic relations. Of course, Admiral O replied. Oh, and Admiral, one more thing. We've taken the liberty of including some additional information in your ship's databases. Technical specifications for our new vessels, tactical analyses of our engagement strategies, historical documentation of human warfare. You know, educational materials. Why, I found myself asking. Captain Mitchell smiled, and for the first time since our encounter began, his expression seemed genuinely warm. Because, Doctor, we want the consortium to understand exactly what they're inviting into galactic civilization. We're not a primitive species that can be easily managed or controlled. We're a competitive species that adapts quickly and fights to win. We want to be part of galactic civilization, but we want to be partners, not subjects. And if the consortium doesn't accept that partnership, the smile faded from Captain Mitchell's face. Then they'll learn what human warfare looks like when we're not being restrained. As we jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving the human solar system behind, I found myself staring at the additional data the humans had loaded into our computers. Thousands of files detailing their military history, their strategic thinking, their technological capabilities. But it was one file in particular that made me understand the true scope of what we were dealing with. A simple historical document titled the Geneva Convention. I spent the rest of our journey home reading about humanity's attempts to regulate warfare, to make killing more humane, to establish rules for conduct even in the midst of total war. And I realized that everything we had experienced, the systematic dismantling of our fleet, the surgical precision of their attacks, the careful preservation of our lives even while destroying our ships, had been the humans following their own rules for civilized warfare. They had treated us as honored enemies rather than extermination targets. They had shown restraint, mercy, and professional courtesy while demonstrating their complete tactical superiority. When we finally reached consortium space, I knew I would have to write the most important report of my career. A report that would fundamentally change how galactic civilization understood warfare, violence, and the terrifying adaptability of a species that had learned to kill efficiently while somehow retaining their essential humanity. But first, I had to convince the consortium that sending a larger fleet to discipline the humans would be the last mistake our civilization ever made. The consortium's reaction to our return was everything I had feared and worse. Admiral O and I were debriefed separately, our accounts recorded and analyzed by teams of military strategists and political analysts. But even as we described the systematic destruction of our fleet, even as we detailed the humans' impossible technological adaptation rate and their casual militarization of an entire planet, I could see the disbelief in their eyes. Dr. High Counselor Eth said during my final debriefing session, "Your account describes a primitive species defeating a modern exploration fleet using crude weapons and converted civilian vessels. You must understand how unlikely this sounds." I had expected this reaction. The consortium had never encountered a species like humanity. Their entire understanding of technological and military development was based on species that followed predictable patterns. Slow technological progress, gradual military sophistication, careful political integration. High Counselor, I've included complete sensor logs from our engagement. The data clearly shows. The data shows your fleet was defeated, yes. But there are many possible explanations that don't require us to believe that a single-planet species with primitive technology somehow revolutionized warfare in a matter of days. He was looking at me the way you might look at a person claiming to have seen impossible things. Professional skepticism mixed with gentle condescension. "What other explanations?" I asked. "Perhaps your fleet encountered an advanced species masquerading as primitives. Perhaps the humans are a client species of some unknown galactic power. Perhaps your sensor readings were compromised by technology we don't understand." I stared at him across the polished conference table. "High Counselor, have you read the tactical analysis files the humans provided?" "I have interesting documents, highly detailed for supposed primitives." "Did you read their historical warfare documentation?" "Some of it, rather disturbing, actually. If accurate, it suggests an unusually violent species development." That was when I realized the fundamental disconnect. The consortium's leadership was reading about humanity's military history the way you might read about the hunting practices of dangerous animals. They saw documentation of efficient killing, but they didn't understand the implications of a species that had systematically developed the science of warfare over thousands of years. "High Counselor, with respect, I don't think you understand what we encountered out there." His expression sharpened. "Then explain it to me, Doctor, make me understand." I took a breath and tried to find words for something that still gave me nightmares. We encountered a species that has spent their entire evolutionary development learning to kill members of their own species more efficiently. Not occasionally, not as a last resort, but as a primary driver of their technological and social advancement. They have taken the science of warfare and refined it to an art form. All species go through violent periods during development. Not like this. High Counselor, humans don't just fight wars. They study war. They have academic institutions dedicated to military strategy. They have professional military castes that do nothing but prepare for conflict. They have games, entertainment, literature, entire cultural traditions built around competitive violence. I pulled up the historical files on my data pad. They've been in a state of constant warfare for their entire recorded history, but they haven't just been randomly violent. They've been systematically learning. Every conflict teaches them something new. Every technological advancement gets turned into a military application. Every generation is more efficient at warfare than the last. High Counselor Eth was quiet for a long moment. You're describing a species-wide military culture. No, sir, I'm describing something worse. I'm describing a species where military thinking is so deeply integrated into their psychology that they approach every problem like a military problem. They didn't just defeat our fleet. They turned our first contact into a training exercise for their entire civilization. But I could see he still didn't fully grasp it. None of them did. They were thinking about humans like a more violent version of known species. They didn't understand that humans represented something completely outside galactic experience. 3 days later, the consortium made their decision. We're sending the Grand Fleet, High Admiral announced to the assembled council. 1,200 vessels under my personal command. This human situation will be resolved quickly and permanently. I stood up in the observer's gallery, breaking protocol. High Admiral, I strongly advise against this course of action. She turned to look at me with the kind of expression reserved for junior scientists who had forgotten their place. Doctor, your expertise is in xenobiology, not military strategy. The consortium has been managing first contact situations for. A primitive species that got lucky against one exploration fleet will not stand against the full might of galactic civilization. High Admiral, they're not primitive. Their technology is less advanced, but their military doctrine is more sophisticated than anything in our databases. Sophisticated military doctrine doesn't overcome technological superiority, Doctor. That was when I realized that the consortium's leadership had made the same mistake Admiral O had made. They were thinking about humans as a technological problem to be solved rather than a military problem to be understood. High Admiral, may I ask what your tactical approach will be? Standard pacification protocol. We'll establish a blockade around their system, demonstrate overwhelming force, and demand compliance with consortium integration requirements. If they resist, we'll systematically destroy their military capabilities until they surrender. And if they don't surrender? High Admiral looked at me as if I had asked a particularly stupid question. Doctor, when faced with 1,200 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy, no species fails to surrender. It would be suicide. I felt a chill run down my spine. High Admiral, humans don't think about warfare the way we do. They don't surrender just because the odds are against them. Everyone surrenders when facing impossible odds, Doctor. It's simple logic. But that was exactly the problem. Humans didn't follow simple logic. They followed human logic, which was something entirely different. I tried one more time. High Admiral, I request permission to accompany the Grand Fleet as an observer. If nothing else, someone who has actually encountered humans should be present. Request granted. Perhaps witnessing a proper military operation will help you understand why your first contact mission failed so dramatically. 2 weeks later, I found myself aboard the flagship Galactic Dominion, the largest and most powerful vessel in consortium space. Around us, 1,200 warships moved in perfect formation toward the human solar system. It was the most impressive display of military might in galactic history. It wasn't nearly enough. The humans were waiting for us. Our sensors detected them long before we reached their system's edge. Not dozens of ships this time, but thousands. The entire space around their planet was filled with defensive installations, mobile weapons platforms, and vessels of every conceivable design. Impossible, High Admiral muttered, staring at the tactical display. Our intelligence indicated minimal space-based infrastructure. Where did they get thousands of ships? I studied the sensor readings with growing dread. Admiral, those aren't all ships. They've turned their entire moon into a weapons platform. Those readings show massive manufacturing complexes throughout their asteroid belt. They've industrialized their entire star system for warfare. In 3 weeks, impossible. But the evidence was right there on our screens. The humans had taken their entire stellar system and turned it into a fortress. Not just their planet, not just their orbital space, but everything. Every asteroid had been converted to a mining operation or weapons platform. Every moon had been turned into a military installation. Even their sun had artificial structures around it, massive solar collection arrays powering industrial complexes on a scale that comprehension. Admiral, our communications officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Put it through. The figure that appeared on our main screen wasn't Captain Mitchell. This was someone new, someone whose uniform carried more insignia and whose bearing suggested considerably higher authority. This is Admiral Sarah of the United Earth Defense Fleet. I welcome the Consortium Grand Fleet to our star system. I am Admiral, Commander of Earth's military forces. High Admiral stepped forward. I am High Admiral of the Galactic Consortium. You will stand down your military forces immediately and submit to Consortium authority for proper integration into galactic civilization. Admiral smiled, and something about that expression made me grip my chair. I'm afraid that's not acceptable, High Admiral. Earth has reviewed the Consortium's integration protocols and finds them incompatible with our sovereignty. We're prepared to discuss alternative arrangements. There are no alternative arrangements. You will comply with Consortium law or face the consequences. I see. Admiral's expression didn't change. High Admiral, are you familiar with human history? I have no interest in the violent past of a primitive species. That's unfortunate because understanding our history is crucial to understanding our position. Humans have a saying, High Admiral, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. We've learned from our history. Have you learned from yours? High Admiral's patience was clearly running out. Your threats are meaningless against the Grand Fleet. Stand down immediately, or we will destroy your military forces. High Admiral, you misunderstand. I'm not threatening you. I'm trying to prevent a catastrophic misunderstanding. Earth requests 1 hour to transmit a full briefing on our capabilities. After reviewing this information, you're welcome to reconsider your position. We don't negotiate with primitive species. Admiral was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried the same terrible certainty I had heard from Captain Mitchell. Very well, High Admiral, you've been warned. The transmission ended. All ships, High Admiral commanded, advance to attack formation, target their primary military installations. What happened next was unlike anything in recorded military history. The humans didn't wait for us to enter their system. They brought the battle to us. The first indication something was wrong came from our forward scouts. Ships that were there one moment simply weren't the next. Admiral, our sensor officer reported, voice tight with confusion. I'm reading massive gravitational distortions. Our forward elements are reporting spatial anomalies. Explain. It appears the humans have deployed some kind of space-folding technology. They're using localized gravity wells to create tactical wormholes. Impossible. Gravity manipulation technology was theoretical even for the most advanced consortium species. But the evidence was undeniable. Human ships were appearing throughout our formation, striking key targets, then disappearing before we could respond. How are they targeting our ships through our formation? High Admiral demanded. The answer came from our own analysis computers. The humans weren't just using superior tactics. They were using our own formation against us. They had somehow calculated exactly how our ships would be positioned and had pre-programmed their gravity wells to place their ships exactly where they needed to be to cause maximum damage. They're not reacting to our movements, our tactical officer reported with growing alarm. They're predicting our movements. Every maneuver we make, they're already prepared for it. That was when I understood. Admiral, they've simulated this engagement. They've run computer models of exactly how the Grand Fleet would approach their system, exactly how we would deploy, exactly how we would attack. This entire battle was planned before we arrived. High Admiral stared at the tactical display as ship after ship showed damage or destruction markers. How could they possibly predict our tactics? Because they studied our tactics when they defeated Admiral O's fleet. They didn't just learn how our technology worked, they learned how we think, how we fight, how we make decisions. This isn't a battle, Admiral. This is an execution. The Grand Fleet, the pride of galactic civilization, was being systematically dismantled by a species that had been in space for less than a century. But the worst was yet to come. As our formation began to collapse under the coordinated human assault, new contacts appeared on our sensors. More human ships, but these were different. Larger, more sophisticated. Admiral, our communications officer called, we're receiving a transmission from one of the new human vessels. The figure that appeared on screen was wearing a different uniform, one I didn't recognize. Human, but somehow different. This is Admiral of the Jupiter Defense Fleet. Hi, Admiral, you have 60 seconds to order a complete withdrawal of consortium forces from this system, or we will be forced to demonstrate our full capabilities. Jupiter Defense Fleet, High Admiral looked confused. Earth has off-world colonies. Admiral, I said quietly, Jupiter is another planet in their system. They've established military forces throughout their local space. In 3 weeks. The human admiral continued. High Admiral, Earth has shared our tactical analysis with our colonial defense forces. We are prepared for this contingency. Please do not force us to escalate. High Admiral's pride finally overwhelmed her judgment. I will not be threatened by primitives. All ships full assault, destroy everything. Admiral nodded sadly. I'm sorry to hear that. The transmission ended, and space around us exploded into violence beyond description. The humans stopped holding back. Every asteroid in their system revealed hidden weapons. Their sun's collection arrays redirected their massive energy output into beam weapons that could cut through our largest ships like paper. Hidden platforms throughout their system opened fire simultaneously. But the most terrifying thing was their coordination. Thousands of human vessels, hundreds of orbital platforms, dozens of planetary installations, all acting as a single coordinated entity. No communication delays, no tactical confusion, no hesitation. It's impossible, our tactical officer whispered. No fleet can coordinate like this. The communication lag alone should make this level of coordination impossible. I stared at the tactical display, finally understanding the true scope of human warfare capability. They're not coordinating, I said quietly. They're executing a pre-planned strategy. They've wargamed this scenario thousands of times, prepared for every possible consortium response, and trained their entire military to execute coordinated operations without requiring real-time communication. The Grand Fleet was dying around us, and there was nothing we could do to stop it. Admiral, our damage control officer reported, we've lost 80% of the fleet. Remaining ships are requesting permission to withdraw. High Admiral stared at the tactical display with the expression of someone whose entire understanding of reality had just collapsed. How, she whispered, how did they defeat the Grand Fleet? Admiral's voice came over the communication system one final time. High Admiral, Earth offers medical assistance for your survivors and safe passage back to consortium space. We regret that this demonstration was necessary, but we hope it clarifies Earth's position regarding forced integration. What do you want? High Admiral asked, her voice barely audible. A seat at the table, High Admiral. Not as subjects, not as a client species, but as equals. We want to join galactic civilization as partners. And if we refuse? Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Then we'll continue to defend ourselves until you change your mind, however long that takes. As the remnants of the Grand Fleet limped back toward consortium space, I found myself writing the report that would change galactic civilization forever. The humans hadn't just defeated us. They had demonstrated that everything we thought we knew about warfare, about technology, about the relationship between advancement and military capability, was wrong. They were a species that had learned to wage war more efficiently than any species in galactic history. More importantly, they were a species that had learned to wage war while maintaining their essential humanity. They didn't want to conquer the galaxy. They didn't want to destroy other species. They just wanted to be left alone to develop on their own terms, and they were prepared to defend that right against any threat. The consortium would eventually accept their terms. We had no choice. Resolution 847 Alpha, designating humans as a protected aggressor species, was passed unanimously. But more importantly, we learned something that changed how every species in the galaxy thought about conflict. True military superiority isn't about having better weapons. It's about being willing to use whatever weapons you have more effectively than your enemy is willing to use theirs. And in that regard, humanity has no equals in the known galaxy. I still wake up some nights, remembering Admiral's calm voice as she systematically destroyed the most powerful fleet in galactic history. Remembering Captain Mitchell's polite threats during our first encounter. Remembering the terrible efficiency with which humanity had learned to wage war. But mostly, I remember their restraint, their willingness to show mercy to defeated enemies, their desire for peace even while demonstrating their capacity for total war. Humans are the most terrifying warriors in the galaxy, and we're all very fortunate that they choose to be our friends.